Hi, everyone, and welcome to Speakup Monday. Today, I'm your host, Bhavna Parihar, and I'm back in the host seat, and it feels amazing to be back. And we're coming to you live from tropical Nomad, Canggu, in beautiful Bali, rainy Indonesia. For those who are joining us for the first time, both online and in person, Speakup Monday is all about motivation. In fact, we're an award-winning talk show for motivation, and we believe that people inspire people. That the more conversations you have, the more perspective you gain, and thus the more compassionate you become. We are now episode 352, 4 years running, every Monday without fail, rain or shine, and we are featuring entrepreneurs from all walks of life who are making a real social and impact on humans. My next guest is very special to me. Not only is she a good friend, but she's also an entrepreneur who is leading by example, making change on a very social and human level. With a background in aviation engineering and neuroscience, backed with experience running tech companies, and a personal commitment to wellness, growth, and all things mindset, my guest, Nafiseh Gholami, is here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So most recently, she has created the startup web app platform called iSelfCoach and is the founder and CEO. And uniquely, this is the type of platform where you are your own work. You are your own coach. And I imagine that every moment in life has kind of led you to this moment, to the work that you're doing, and you are literally the embodiment of the work that you provide to other people. So before we get into that, let's dive deep. We know this is an open format Q&A where we're going to have some really interesting questions to understand all things wellness, tech, ethical software, spirituality, and how that makes its way into the work we can do on ourselves to become more self-aware. So with that, let's get started about your background. I mean, you were raised in the Netherlands and would love to understand, in your childhood, were there any sort of seeds that were planted that got you on the track to starting to wanting to make human change?
Gosh. Hi, everyone. So my background is I was raised in the Netherlands, but I was born in Iran. And being a refugee and growing up in the Netherlands obviously makes you already very conscious and aware of the fact that there is a differentiation between me and the others. And even if I would not think of it, the society and the surrounding makes you aware of that. So I guess in a way, growing up in the Netherlands, being a foreigner, it definitely, set a tone, I guess, yeah.
Are there sort of examples, just like sort of from your childhood? I know that you, later on in life, started working with Amnesty International and starting to create change in that way. But at that point, were there any moments or that you kind of can look back or any turning points growing up that you thought, okay, there's something that I need to be aware of for myself, but how do I navigate that? Like what tools? Because those are tools that at a young age, we don't know what that looks like.
I think growing up in the Netherlands, we moved a lot as well, and realizing that I was different, and most of the time where we lived was majority of the people were very Dutch. There were not many foreigners, and I realized how I needed to up my level, make my Dutch very well, and I was very conscious of being on their level because I really felt I was looked down upon, and I didn't like that. I'm like, we need to work on this. We need to make this happen. So whatever I did, I guess I was always very much like, okay, I need to be on top of this. Whether it was learning Dutch or doing a new sports or activity, they were all Dutch people. And I'm like, okay, I need to be on top of this. I need to be on top of this and get good grades. Maybe that's also the Persian blood, by the way. I'm not sure. The Asians,
Classic immigrant experience. Well, it sounds like, I mean, there are these like building blocks that maybe at the time you didn't realize, where you're saying that you had to learn this, you had to adapt to this. These are exercises that you were doing, maybe not realizing that they were actual exercises that you were doing on yourself to try to fit in or to grow. And I know we'll get more into iSelfCoach itself and sort of how it's built and how it does allow one to do that. But you had already kind of started doing the work without really realizing that you were doing the work in terms of on yourself. So now let's fast forward a little bit. So you have a background in tech, but before that you were in aviation engineering. And how did that experience working in that sort of environment start to shape and start to kind of build the blocks from where you are now?
I'm going to be real with you. Actually, this is such a good reflection for me with these questions. I'm getting epiphanies. I need to go write this down now. One of the reasons I actually chose aviation engineering was I met the manager at one of these. Yeah, you have these introductory days that you can go to the university. And he told me, listen, this is one of the toughest bachelor degrees that you can get, and not many succeed, and not many actually can follow through. So you need to be very sure about it. I'm like, who's this guy telling me I cannot do this? And I was already doubting about aviation. I chose it anyway. So that was, again, proving, right? And majority of the people around me were men. There were only 20 girls out of the 480 students. And funny enough, 19 girls did graduate, and we only graduated with 150 people indeed. So I guess that shaped me in a way as well, going from a technical study, which is majority men. Even then, I would go and do volunteers and go to other high schools and say, hey, a tech study is fun for women too. You can do that. But yeah, so I guess it shaped me in that regard of being majority with men. Even till this day, every job I've had, any full-time job I did, I was the first woman doing that. And the only woman.
So you were trailblazing from a very young age into sort of your professional years and through your education. And then there was an interesting story, or I think turning points that you had, I imagine, that started to instill upon you what you want to do next. So you've now decided that I've already sort of gone against sort of the grain. I am going to stand up to the conditioning that we have around sort of male-centric professions, and I'm going to do it anyway. Tell me about, there was a very life-changing trip, or I think multiple trips back to Africa, that were sort of the turning points, I imagine, that led you sort of to where you are now. Tell us a little bit about that.
So working in tech, being the only woman ever being hired to do that job, made me reflect a lot, because I didn't feel in my place, yet I was trying to constantly prove myself, which is from childhood on, being a foreigner, I need to prove myself. And here I am, creating another situation for myself, being in tech, majority men, to again prove myself. And I really had this epiphany in 2016 that I don't want to play this game anymore. I do not want to be involved where I need to constantly be proving and playing the game that someone else created. I want to play a game that I set the rules for. Majority of the time, even when you work for that company, you don't even know what the rules are. You just go and hope that you win. And that's how I felt, to be honest. So one of the things that I've always loved was obviously traveling. And yeah, I've been doing that quite often back then already, like going somewhere and just rent a car, and with my back then partner. And in 2015, 16, I had this epiphany of, oh my gosh, how amazing would this be to get a car and then travel the world with a car? Why not? I thought I was so original with this idea, by the way. Little did I know it's called overlanding. It's very famous.
It was a new term for me when you first told me about it, so I do think it's a little bit, out there as well.
So yeah, that's what I did. I did have to do some convincing, but basically gave up everything. My security of having a home, having a job, a stable income. I'm like, no, let's give that all up and let's travel. So we did. So we did buy eventually a Toyota and build it ourselves. And I wanted to get going as fast as I could, and that was in December. I'm like, where is it warm in December? I'm like, Africa is warm. So that's when I thought, like, let's go to Africa. And you have to imagine majority of the people around you when you talk about Africa, they think you've gone insane because Africa is insecure. You don't know what's going on. It's war. There's like so much images created for Africa in that regard. But nonetheless, we chose and we did it. So we started traveling in 2016, and I went to Africa. And my gosh, that was the most. If I could tell you all to do that, I would just like go do it. But it's hard. It's not that easy. Why? It's because mostly of being in that minimalistic lifestyle.
So when you talk about that, just like such a different environment, you're putting yourself through something by choice that ultimately is going to grow you, challenge you, and maybe be inspired by what's happening around you, because that, I imagine, would have been a very life-changing trip, and there would have been maybe some turning points. If you can kind of think back to, is there maybe one or two moments on that trip that now looking back you realize that experience actually was sort of the genesis of I Self Coach?
I'm not sure if there was one or two. It was simultaneously, to be honest with you. I really want to create this image with everyone that traveling with a car, you don't have electricity whenever you want. You don't have water whenever you want. You're very living in a minimalistic way. And that alone creates a way of conscious living. So when I'm washing the dishes, I'm super aware, and I'm focused on that water and how much and what kind of soap, because it's going out in the nature. Like, you're super aware of what you're doing and what kind of groceries you're buying. So that whole mindset, it shifts, and automatically and simultaneously you become more and more aware of the world, of the people around you, of yourself, like how you're holding yourself, and let alone crossing borders. Africa is huge, and crossing borders by car, I mean, arriving by plane is nothing compared to crossing that and staying humble and true, even though you have this big ass car, excuse my language, and it looks so fancy and it has a foreign plate, right? So the first thing they want is for you to give them money. And one thing I very much was conscious about is not to bribe. And we didn't once bribe anyone. And we made it happen. And that was becoming me, who was super impatient person, becoming more and more patient, because I did not have anywhere to go. And these realizations of, wow, I literally have the time of the world in my hand. I even remember that one time in police, they took our license and they didn't let us drive until we paid. I remember telling this man, like, listen up, do you see this thing on the rooftop? That's a rooftop tent. I can just open this up. I don't need to be anywhere. I can open this up and camp here if you want to. And I think we sat there for an hour because we did literally nothing to do anyway. And they gave it, and we went back, and we continued our trip. And that made me again realize, wow, how we create concepts of time. So these are like
the little nuggets that, yeah, so I'm hearing, sort of themes around sort of just that act of sort of taking a step back, sitting with yourself, the act of patience, that act of consciousness, being kind of sitting with your awareness, sitting in what maybe is an uncomfortable situation and trying to solve for that, taking on challenges as an effort to grow you. These are all sort of the little sprinkles that I see just from your childhood, from your schooling, from your corporate, and then in your travels. So what came next?
Well, this is a less fun thing, because I also realized during my travel that the partner I was with was not my partner to live forever with. I mean, what is forever anyway? Yet we did continue. So to be honest, that was a very hard decision, but we both decided to continue our trip, which was amazing. And that awareness grew and grew and grew about who I am, what do I want, where am I standing in life. And the people you meet, I mean, gosh, it doesn't matter where we are. I think we can all relate here in Bali even. It doesn't matter where we are, but the people make the difference. And doing this overlanding, you meet a lot of locals. Like, you go into a village and they're super open and humble, and they're so giving. And that made me also realize, these people had life knowledge. They didn't go to school, yet the things that they were saying, I'm like, wow, that's very deep. That's so knowledgeable, because they're living their life. And they were living in the life in the moment, right? They were not thinking of 10 steps ahead. And because they would say, I asked them about that. I would go in discussion out of curiosity. They're like, and by the way, they would call me Nafi, because I know Nafiseh is very hard, and Nafi is very common apparently in Africa too. And they're like, listen, we have every season there's a new fruit. Why should we worry?
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and we in the West, we have winters. We need to prepare ourselves. We need to prepare for food, because that will not be there, right, when it's cold and snowy. They're like, we don't have that. We have 4 beautiful seasons. Why should we worry? I'm like, wow, these conversations makes you deepen your horizon, literally.
So was this now you had left and came back, or you were staying? Because it sounds like this is where I'm sensing sort of like a shift in your sort of worldview, how you want to like live next, what you want to do next.
Where did I go back to? You mean from Africa?
Yes.
So yeah.
Because that trip didn't last forever. I mean, we're sitting here today. So there was a moment in time between then and now, and maybe a few moments, that you're now taking sort of this knowledge sharing experience that you're having. You're hearing these stories from the locals, the way they live in a very present, very gratitude sort of way. You also have this experience living in the Western culture, a little bit more consumerism, a little bit more materialistic potentially, and coming also, as you said, from aviation, from this sort of male-driven. So all of these are now, I feel like, are starting to intersect for you, because someone doesn't create a self-coaching software without having gone through experiences to actually feel the confidence to actually impart that wisdom. So what happened after for you, after you had started having these epiphanies and these realizations?
So I've been thinking a lot during this travel what I wanted. A lot of people around me would say, you should be a coach, it would be amazing. That back then, coach was not really a common thing. And I thought maybe I should be a coach for women in tech, because I had a hard time as a female in technology. And these are all realizations I had in Africa. I even wrote a blog and I put it on LinkedIn, which is still up there. And shortly after, I realized, that it might be men who made my life harder for me in the technology world. But it was also men who gave me that opportunity. I made huge career jumps in my life, and they were all men who hired me. It was all, so there we go. And I'm realizing it's not about women, men. Gosh, we need to stop thinking like that. We need to be united. We need to help. And I was thinking, like, but what made the men different, right? Those who hired me and supported me, and those who were basically trying to, they felt maybe threatened or whatever that might be. And I realized that, again, while I was going in Africa even, I'm like, it's all about self-awareness. Because once you're aware of yourself, you're more supportive of the other. Once you're self-aware, you don't feel being treated, right? And I saw that back in Africa, and I saw it in me even, how I changed during that period. So these were all seeds that were planting in my mind, like, what do I want to do next? And should I do this coaching? Should I do that? Yeah.
So with that, because that level of self-awareness, which, we kind of talk about as we're on sort of like a growth journey or self-development, that idea of being self-aware, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have your setbacks and you're going to fall again, you're going to trip. You're going to heal that wound, you'll trip again. It's just having regained that confidence to continue to be so, but to instill in that individually. So when you were thinking about, when people are saying, oh, you should be a coach, where did it start to shift for you where you thought, I am my own coach?
So this is a huge jump, because when I came back from Africa, I actually decided I gave myself an ultimatum. I only want to do the things that really makes me joyful. So I said to myself, or I'm going back to aviation, or I'm going to start my own business. But coming back from Africa and not having anything, starting from scratch, was hard for me to also start a business. So I decided to find something that I enjoy, that I would think I will enjoy, and in aviation. So I found one, and it was a startup company actually in software for aviation. And I think that experience, this is why I'm sharing it, because that shaped me too. Thinking in solutions is of course an engineering mind, yet working for software and thinking throughout software for solutions, that definitely helped as well. Because whatever people, if they, even to this day, if someone having an issue, I'm like, how can we solve this with the software?
So with that, actually, on that word software, and we've had discussions, and you start to kind of see this now when you think about sort of the coaching space. And if you're now self-coaching and you're doing it for yourself, and we'll dive more into the company, but just on that point around ethical software and how can it be ethical if we're not being coached by another individual who has our interests at heart, but we are coaching ourselves, but the software itself is using us both as like the tool and the customer. What are your thoughts on that, and how are you starting to navigate that when you decided to form your company?
So to also answer your last question, former question is, in 2019, I went through a lot. I had a breakup. I had no home. I didn't have a job. I was very much aware of myself. I could go in self-pity or just work on myself and improve and help myself go through that. And working for a company for software and everything helped me definitely a lot. And I was very much leaning more towards spirituality as well. And in 2019, now I call it a download. I was in the shower and I got this download of this because I was still thinking of what can I build, what can I bring, because of these thoughts of being a coach maybe, and I realized I had this whole idea of software, and then I wrote it down, and I wanted to make it happen. But again, I was also on the social medias and being so triggered and influenced by come and scroll and do this and do that, right? And so when I had this idea, I was so determined that I'm gonna make something, because we're talking about self-coaching. If I'm saying that you can coach yourself, that means you don't need anything other than yourself. And for that means also that I need to practice what I preach, and the company needs to be that too. And the company is me. So thinking of that, I was very much going towards how can I make software ethical? How can I create a tool that is approachable for everyone, yet it doesn't say you must use this or you will not coach yourself. And this is going against all streams, because being a founder, CEO, and even if you want to raise money, they want to see all the money flow. And it's just, right, they want to see revenue, and you're creating a need, a desire that they come back and they want to keep buying it. I didn't want to be a Headspace. They're doing amazing work, but you can meditate without an app, guys. We don't need an app to meditate. But yet, they created this need. So how amazing are you? That's what I was very much questioning. And that was very tough on me too, because that means you go very slow, especially if it's your first startup. But yeah, that's a little bit of what I'm thinking of.
Because you're also, as you said, you're creating it. You are the creation. So you are your proof of concept. You are the prototype. So, unlike maybe other companies where there's a product or a service that we offer, this is people potentially buying into the idea that, okay, this is who she is and this is what she's done. I can also do the same. So around that, how would you say, or how would you sort of challenge anyone who wants to differentiate between people who are employing a life coach or using a mindful app? Where does I self-coach, and I know it's, as we've been creating it, how does that differentiate itself, and where and why?
So I know I just almost said something bad about one app, but it's actually amazing that we have all these opportunities of apps and technology out there, because we are all unique. One app that is suiting for me, or even a coach, doesn't mean that will work for you. And having all these diversities in options, that's amazing. I mean, we're living in a day of technology, right? And all these opportunities that's like in the palm of our hands, literally now with our phone. And where I self-coach comes in is, we are still being so triggered and influenced by you need this to do that. And all I'm saying with I self-coach is like, you know what? Let's tap into yourself first. And then maybe you will know better what app maybe even suits you best. Or you will realize you don't need that app even because you created the self-coaching abilities. And maybe even if it's about a coach, a lot of people will ask, like, are you competing? I'm not competing with coaches because you know what? There are so many different kind of coaches out there. But if you know what you want, you would also know if you need a business coach. Maybe it's a life coach. You at least know what it is. And you will go with a specific focus and determination because you're self-aware.
Because it sounds also like there's a lot of sort of knowledge and stuff that's being garnered through the use of iSelf-Coach. And a lot of that knowledge is stuff that you would have gained through your experiences. So we talk a little, you touched before on obviously having the tech background and wanting to create more opportunities and to be in that space. And the difference between the men who supported you was that they had that level of self-awareness. With that, too, we kind of toe the line around spirituality and how it makes its way into the more self-aware we become, the more aware we are of our universe and our place in it and how we function, how it impacts the next person. So let's talk a little bit more about how the spirituality side of it makes its way into when people would typically maybe find the words tech, mental health, spirituality, sort of kind of doing this interplay.
To be honest, I'm still dancing with those terminologies. What is that anyway, right? What does it mean for us as a human being? Everyone has their own interpretation. And it took me a while to use the word spirituality. I basically tried to avoid it because I felt this was just so heavy and loaded. And when I actually had this download, I wrote everything down. I even sketched everything, how it would look like before doing any research, because I wanted to be clear that I'm not being influenced by all that information that's out there. And once I sketched it and I wrote everything down, I started doing the research and also in the spiritual aspects and realizing, my gosh, there's so much resemblance, even with neuroscience and spirituality. There's just so many facts out there that is supporting each other. And that's why I also did this course for neuroscience, because I was like, oh, this is interesting. I mean, thank God you don't need to do a course for spirituality because you're it. Yet for science, we need to do that, right? So I guess, yeah, that was a little bit of doing the research and reflecting back on my own journey. What is it that is self-coaching? Because I'm saying that I'm coaching myself, and what did I do? So I was very much reflecting on my own journey and what made me different. Why would people tell me to go and be a coach? What did I do that others are not? I'm like, everyone should be able to do this. I didn't understand until then. I'm like, oh my gosh. I've been also journaling since the age of 11. So I would also read back into them, right? So it's not just memory, which is very flaky. That's a fact, by the way. But also that I can read back into it and realizing, my gosh, I've been doing specific ways constantly, and I can bring that in software.
So when you talk about those specific ways, and as you said, that kind of makes almost a blueprint for what iSelf-Coach becomes. Can you share maybe a couple tools that you were using on yourself or tips that you were doing in that process that you were doing on yourself, that eventually, as you start to kind of recognize the benefit in that and the value, and that this is something that others could also do for themselves? Like you said, journaling, for example, was one of them. Are there a few others?
Well, this is basically iSelf-Coach is containing of 4 steps, 4 phases. But just say it. This is something. It's not new. It will not blow you away. But stepping out of the comfort zone. We all know how it is beneficial for our growth, yet 98% of the people do not step out of their comfort zone. And one of those things is finding a challenge purposefully. But, realizing that this is also reflecting on my own self, realizing that I've been challenging myself on purpose so often. Even from childhood, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be good at it. I mean, that was a little bit like too much. I'm not saying that you should be good at your challenge, but and I wrote about it. And writing about it is amazing, but the biggest one is reflecting on it. And that's where the actual growth happens. And we're not talking about challenges that life throws at us, because there's plenty. And this is why I call it purposeful challenges. Like, what is my comfort zone, and how can I challenge it for the sake of fun? This is very important. Let's have fun while I'm challenging myself. And that actually has an effect on our brain, on the frontal lobe, and it creates these new activities in our brain. Why? Because I just always say our brain is so lazy. It just wants to be on autopilot constantly. So if you do something he or she doesn't know the result of, I mean, how many of you even drove from one place to the other without realizing, like, oh my gosh, how did I end up here? I mean, maybe Bali less, because you need to be aware of the traffic here. But this is because your mind is on autopilot. It goes and it knows exactly that pothole to avoid, and it knows exactly what to do. And what if we change that route that we never took before? We don't know on navigation, we don't know it. Suddenly your brain is activated because it doesn't know where you're going. So it's like, oh, we need to pay attention because we don't know what kind of hazard might be on our way. That very thing will activate in a way which creates this open mind. This is very going straight to that, but and I think that right now, whoever is listening, you can easily like tap into yourself and say, okay, this is my comfort zone. And maybe there's something you wanted to do but never dared to do. And now you're like, you know what? I'm going to challenge myself on purpose, and I'm going to do it while having fun. And it's very important not to think of, oh, I need to be good at this because I did that, it doesn't work. It's about just enjoying the journey again. I use piano as often as an example. If you wanted to learn to play the piano and never dared, or you never did it, your challenge will be taking piano classes, not learning how to play piano. This is very different. Why? When you are setting a goal, I need to learn piano, that will create anxiety. You will not do it. You will procrastinate and you will just delay it. But if you're going to take piano classes, you can do that right now, right? There's no end game or justification of am I good enough or not. It's just taking classes. And that right there makes a difference already.
So in terms of, we talked about how, you're making it fun, you're making it engaging, making it sort of gamification, making it something that we want to do, because the act of being self-aware, growing oneself can be joyful, it can be challenging, but it can be the things that really drive us. So obviously that made its way into the exercise, and we'll talk a little bit about, sort of give everyone a bit of a feel on what I self-coach, how it works, and we can get into that. But before we get there, when you started to, you're now doing, you're fine, you're giving yourselves piano lessons because it challenges you, it gets you out of your comfort zone. You are, at this point, we're talking, this is now 20, like year-wise, where are we, like 2018, 2019, when you're starting to think about, you're taking the course in neuroscience, you are thinking about how can I back my coaching with science and the tools. So talk to me a little bit about sort of where that idea of wellness and tech and well tech kind of come together, and how that started to formulate for you.
So one of the reasons why I did not end up being a coach is because I very believe in our own power and our own beliefs. I do believe that we are unique, and you all know your own thoughts and feelings best. And knowing that, how can I help someone, right, that in that regard? And I might be able to help, but we need to realize where we're at in this world, and we're still evolving. there's an evolution going right now, and technology is very much in the center of it. And I think we can use technology in our benefit, because we should not say, no, don't be on your phone, it's bad for you. Be on your phone very aware and use it to your benefit until it reaches its point. It's good to use technology in that regard, as long as we do it the ethical way. So I think even going and thinking of like further in the future, you need technology, or you will not be reaching the new generation, because the new generation is already, they don't know better.
I mean, I think that's the key, right? It's a reality. So we have this tool in our hand that we can use, and not use it, and not use it in a way that can benefit us and benefit society might just be to the detriment, right? And I think you were sort of recognizing that and thinking about, how do I create sort of a safe space, a joyful space to do that work, and to do it on oneself. But as you evolve, as we all do, how does that work with the software, for the software itself to evolve in itself, and the way that you're developing these exercises? Because if, as a consumer or as a customer, to think, okay, well, she's done this and she's achieved this level of growth and she's continuing to grow, and I'm now using this tool that she has created. How do I, in terms from the I, like the individual level, can feel confident that I am also going to be growing in that same way when this is something that you've created?
Because technology also needs to keep evolving. And I feel that right now even iSelfCoach is going and stepping more towards AI. Well, it's not very AI, it's mostly more deep tech and machine learning, but it will eventually be AI. And even that we can use in our benefits. You can use it in a way that helps people to reflect on themselves and to go deeper on who I am in a conscious way. And who knows what will come after that, and we need to keep evolving and keep being on top of the field with whatever is coming out there. And why that is obviously also to keep being, profitable, but also to reach, again, the audience that we want to, and the young generation, and we will keep having new generations coming. And as long as we do that and we keep evolving, it doesn't mean that now self-coaching is like this. Yeah, maybe 5 years later it will change a little bit and it will adapt a little bit. Also, I'm keep growing and I'm getting more wiser, so I hope that my app will get wiser along the way.
And that it would grow with you. And so for the individual who's thinking to themselves, who's maybe watching online, who's maybe doesn't have some of the benefits that we do living in a place like Bali, where we are surrounded by so much mindfulness and conversations, and someone who might be sitting in a corporate boardroom somewhere and thinking to themselves, well, I recognize that I want to grow and change, but I don't know how to do it. I'm feeling set back. You obviously were trying to humanize this experience, and you yourself have also, I'm sure, had sort of those moments where, even though you're an entrepreneur, you know that you want to create opportunities in tech, you want to sort of move the needle forward and help people make lasting change. That same person is also having those setbacks. So in that way, is there an example that you can maybe share for someone who is watching on the other side, that is feeling sort of, I got to a certain point, I fell backwards a little bit. How do they regain that self-confidence? How do they kind of regain that sense of self-awareness?
Is that mostly about being a founder, or?
Both. I think both as an entrepreneur, as a founder, as the person who is literally the audience and the prototype of your company. What are some examples that you've had to sort of step back and know that you're trying to do work to help people be more self-aware, yet you're going to have those moments, those very sort of maybe sort of dark, maybe sort of self-affirming moments that you also sort of fell backwards. And what did you do to kind of move forward?
One thing that I'm realizing a lot is, for myself, is how the more I'm practicing every day, the things I'm doing, the more deeper and deeper my awareness is. And actually, I used this quote just recently, which is from Dalai Lama, which I'm probably gonna say it wrong again, but it's, we need to create roots so we can withstand stormy weather like these. And we can't expect to grow those roots right when it's stormy. So I think when we're focusing right now, when we are feeling good about deepening those roots, then when you are having that setback, it will be easier to withstand because you're aware, you're like giving yourself a break, allowing yourself to feel like that, and allowing yourself to just be in that moment. And even when you're like, I have done that, I would be like, oh gosh, I need to, especially, I mean, being a founder, this is now almost becoming an identity, and I learned things that I've never knew about myself, and the insecurities that I did not know were there. I've been working on that so hard as well, and I was hard on myself, thinking that I'm not going fast enough with other startups. I need to do this, I need to do that, and I realized constantly when I was giving that to myself, there was a right away reflection of, hey, you're being hard on yourself, and take a little of a break. And I would write about it, or I would do something to just relax. Obviously, I have my daily routines, which is super important, and I think that's also part of self-coaching and self-care, which majority of here in Bali, I think we also do. And I think as long as we do that, again, it makes it easier whenever, and I feel that. I would truly feel that because I've gone through a lot of obstacles by now, and I feel I'm so stronger and more humble out of it, and I allowed myself to be that.
So giving yourself the grace to stumble and learn and pick yourself back up and move forward again, and do it again and again and again. How, or can you share an exercise that exists within iSelf Coach that does that? So if someone who is listening right now can get a sense of taking sort of your real experience, and we've like sort of humanized iSelf Coach in your avatar, and what an exercise would look like. Taking some of these, as we said, making it fun, but also challenging, taking yourself out of the comfort zone.
Yeah, so the app basically helps you to find what challenge fits you best. And oftentimes people think that a challenge is very external. Oh, I need to travel on my own somewhere. I mean, okay, for us it's maybe less of a challenge here. But in these moments, a purposeful challenge can actually be sitting every day 10 minutes alone without distraction. A challenge can be taking a break from your phone for a whole weekend. Like, these are like challenges that bring us more to ourselves. And it can still be fun, right? And I think it's not per se an exercise, because this is like a loop. You need to keep challenging yourself on purpose and finding every time again what is aligned with you right now. Like, what is now calling you? So for me, it's mostly now inner dialogues. I would challenge myself to, for example, only listen. In any kind of situation, I'm like, I'm gonna sit and listen and just nod and be very actively listening. Or I would challenge myself to, it's maybe even using specific words, choosing to use less negative words, even if it's, no, I don't want it. It's like, thank you, I'm good, right? It's very and then I would mess up and I will laugh about it. I'm like, oops, there I go, I did that. And it's about creating fun again, right? Like, okay, because we're focusing, we're redirecting the focus on that challenge, we're doing it, and that again creates that, right? Because our brain is all over the place, but when we do something and we're like, okay, we're doing this, that creates so much, and it's also a dopamine effect.
And so with that sort of like, that sort of that positive sort of feedback loop, right, that happens, and thinking about that from a science perspective. Now, I know that you had like been, you have your expertise in tech, of course, and you also you have your background in neuroscience. Where does that play into what you've created?
So this is a realization I only recently had, that aviation is one of the few or only industries that is very focused on prevention. Is how to prevent any I mean, not to go very extreme, but it is. Whenever there is a crash, there's always a lot of research on how to prevent it for the next time. You don't have that with cars. I know Volvo does it, but that's like it. And you don't have it with a lot of industries because there's like, okay, human factor involved. Aviation, not. Aviation is so focused on prevention that I think unconsciously I was very much on that as well, prevention. And this is what self-coach actually is as well. Again, deepening the roots. Like right now, you're feeling great and you want to do more. Let's grow that roots, you know? You are this beautiful tree and this will help you along the way when you feel a little bit down. You can come up right away. Why? Because, and if you don't, you're easy on yourself. Because you're aware, you have this foundation where you know, okay, I need a little bit more time. And this is, again, that self-coaching, constantly reflecting, doing something, reflecting on yourself, doing that challenge and get back to yourself. How did that make me feel? What did I have? What kind of realizations I have? And that, again, also creates these. So basically, when we do something new, also, it creates new neurocircuits in our brain. So some people call it neuroplasticity. That you need to obviously also repeat. But yeah, that's a little bit of a mingle of everything together.
Yeah, so sure. Like, so the timing of it, the repetition that gets into play, sort of using, like you said, science from a point of understanding the way our brains work, the way our pathways work. So we're repeating exercises, we're then being punted over to the next exercise. So in terms of that aspect, and then taking into account sort of the thoughtfulness and the self-aware and the questioning, kind of marrying that spiritual piece, and then bringing in the next. So is that kind of how you sort of see the dance of them coming together?
Yes, and also the way, the steps that I actually had in mind in I Self-Coach. Again, it's based on 4 steps. And first is creating knowledge, so you are motivated enough, like, why should I do this? And then, and I realized that these things that I've put down was a lot of Buddhism involved. And mind you, I was very ignorant. I didn't know exactly what was going on in that world when I wrote this. I only read Dalai Lama's book in 2021. And I had this in 2019. So that's why I now call it a download. I really feel there was a universal knowledge that came through me. And I wrote it down. And it was mostly to prove myself that what I wrote down is now backed with that spiritual aspects of, you know, sitting, reflecting, and creating knowledge. And also from neuroscience that is backing it up. And it's all involved. Let's not forget, we're still in this one world. We cannot differentiate between one or the other. So it makes so much sense that obviously they're backed with each other. And in the beginning, I have to admit, I really felt like I needed to prove why. And now I am confident enough that I know. I've seen results from also other people, and I know it's working. And spirituality, science, and our experience, gosh, yeah, we are all one. Of course it is.
So that's beautiful. Would you say then that what you're trying to offer to the world is the ability to not only to become more self-aware by taking these exercises, coaching themselves on an individual level, and if we do that, what is your hope then on a mass level? Like if we're doing it on individual level, what ripple effect do you see? And what would be your hope for it?
You know, I very much have a dream. I would love for everyone saying that I'm a self-coacher. I coach myself. And, you know, this goes hand in hand of being self-aware. My goal very much is having a world where we all are self-aware. You know that 95% of the people think they are self-aware and only 10% actually are. It's very hard to measure, so I'm not being very stern on that. But I feel a lot of us are aware, but it's very on surface and not very deep. And I believe we can deepen this awareness. And I believe that we can do this around the world because the app that we build is so personalized. It doesn't matter if you have, you know, Asian background or European background. it is fitted to you, because your challenge, you know, the Western challenges are not the Asian challenges, and I've lived both, right? So it's I believe in this, and why am I so fixated on this awareness is, again, we go back to my own experiences, that people who are self-aware, they support another. They're aware of their environment. They don't just throw out things in the out. They're like aware of what they're doing. They're aware of how they are with another human being. And that is, I really much believe that that's how we heal this world, is by awareness.
And what would you say to those who think that words like, or terms like self-awareness, mindset, wellness have become these trendy buzzwords that you're seeing all over, you know, social media? You're hearing people talk about it, and it's something that we've obviously been doing at a very like real human level for eons. But what would you say to someone who thinks, oh, this is just like another trendy thing to get behind? Like, how would you sort of debunk that when people think about, okay, well, what does self-aware look like? Like, am I not aware enough? What, like, how would you sort of get against that?
I would say go on the app and try it out and see it for yourself.
Well said.
Mic drop unintentionally.
And I guess what would you say for you as you're creating and you're in this like creation phase in the startup is what's coming up for you? What next do you see yourself infusing in iSelf-Coach, and what do you see as your biggest challenge?
So I want to really much bring it back also as being a founder of a tech startup. And especially if you're a tech startup, the first thing that is very common is to raise money. And I've been having very much this inner dialogue of confrontation with myself of how I need to be in order to raise money and how I actually am and the company actually is, and how it's not fitting into that image to actually be able to raise money. And I try to create something that will fit that image so I can raise money. And I found myself being unhappy, not motivated, not being very excited, you know. And I thought it's because the setbacks and whatnot. And again, right, you coach yourself. I was reflecting and I was writing, and then it's so good to also speak it out loud. And I've become to realize that I am doing this because I have this purpose, of this bigger purpose. And I want to earn a lot of money with it too. But I want to keep it the way I believe that it is. Because again, we want to create something humane and real. And for that to happen, I cannot have just any kind of money flowing in from investors. I'm not saying that all investors are the same. I have met a couple of people, you know, who are so conscious and they want to have more awareness in technology as well, which is amazing, and I see it more and more often. And it's just good for myself to realize, who am I as a founder? Who am I as a CEO of this company? And am I going to play this game again, right, that is created? Or am I going to stay true to myself? And I honestly believe, and this is, again, practicing what I preach, as long as I stay true to myself, the things that I'm actually also want will come true. And this is what I'm very much focused on. And everything will go slower. I am going to be honest. There's like definitely not as fast, because you don't get $1 million to spend. And now I'm happy with it. I'm like, it's all right, because we're still making a difference in other people's lives, and we're still moving forward.
So you would say you kind of went down that path of having a sense of, as a founder, imposter syndrome, maybe some limiting beliefs in terms of what a founder looks like, what a CEO looks like, versus what Nafiseh looks like and who she is, and she is her work, and kind of, you know, having to sort of kind of go back and forth between that and get to a place where you're at now, where you're saying, I'm building something purposeful. I'm building something that has true change on an individual level, and that takes time. What would you say was your hope for anyone who is, you know, sitting out there just thinking to themselves that I just need an individual to tell me what to do. I need someone else to tell me because I don't trust myself.
I understand that too. And I think in short term, it will work for them. Someone will tell you what to do and you will do it and it's awesome. You're like, wow, you see, this is working. And a few months later, probably you need another person again. And this is the hard reality. And this is why I'm actually creating this self-coaching and why I wish for this world to talk about me being a self-coach or I self-coach, because this is for the long haul. This is not a short-term solution that someone will tell you what to do and then you go do it, and then what?
Yeah, so because the way that you've described the platform is that it sort of works with you, right? So at the end of the day, when you do, and there's nothing to be said against anyone who does seek counsel from an individual who maybe resonates with that, this can be, iSelfCoach can be a part of that, the solution. It doesn't have to be the only thing. But also it sounds like it's also a place of empowerment to sort of gain that confidence that we feel that, hey, I actually can take control of my mind, my body, my soul, and how I try to improve on a daily basis. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. And to be fair, in our web app, we do have an in-person guidance at this moment because also we are still a startup. We're still building and improving. Eventually, we want to make it in a way that you don't need an extra support. But even if you do, that's right. And I think it can be a support system. It can be a tool helping each other. And I think a lot of coaches even help you to realize, a good coach will help you to realize your own true self and to build your own abilities. The thing is that we still are also so focused on how to grow, so we want to lure them back. We want to keep them coming back. And I think if you are aware of that and you're, a self-coacher, if you will, you would know when is the right time and when not, and what person is even the right for you and what not, and even what tool is right for you and what not. With iSelfCoach, we definitely try to create both, and the way we approach it and calling it self-coaching makes it already very out there, right? That you are your own thoughts and feelings and you know yourself best. But it's a lingo, yeah.
And so I want to just take a moment to pause and just kind of go back to the audience here. So the best part of having an in-person audience is the dynamic it creates and an opportunity to ask questions. We'll get a bit more into sort of what's coming up next for iSelfCoach and how people can sort of get involved and understand more. But for a few months, we're going to have a mic be passed around and would love for everyone to take an opportunity to ask what they would of Nafiseh and trying to understand not only her journey as an entrepreneur, but her journey as a founder, as CEO, and the work that she's doing and embodying. So there's going to be a mic that we passed around, so if you want to get ready, raise your hand. Don't be shy. A question you might have, someone next to you might have it as well.
Got it? Yeah. So, yeah, hello. So, firstly, really, really good. I get, because again, I come from a coaching background as well. And one of my questions you just answered, funnily enough, which is, I think without being too subjective, the idea of a coach is to instill confidence in the person that you're coaching so they don't need you anymore, right? So as you mentioned as well, that this, there's a whole coaching industry out there. In Bali, there's a cafe even named after it. And they make a lot of money. I'm not saying they're doing the right thing, the wrong thing, just saying how it is, out of teaching people how to coach, right? It's a whole business, right? So what you just said is that you're coming from a place that could be quite polarizing, because in a way, you're not setting yourself against that, but you're standing out from that. So one thing that came up as I was listening to you there was isn't that like a perfect way for you to go, which is working with those coaches who do have that belief that, hey, my job isn't to get a lifetime check from this person, but my job is to help and show this person that they have it within themselves, right? To actually become self-aware and so on. So from that perspective, does your software, does your program really support that? And if so, how?
Thank you for that question. Yes, absolutely. Actually, any coach here that feels like that, yeah, come to me after this, because it is eventually a tool. It's a tool to help people. And what we are even doing right now for our organizations is creating these workshop events. But the thing is that the app is in the centerpiece. It's in the center of the attention. And just to hold space for people to create this self-motivation and holding yourself accountable to keep showing up, we created these sessions where the individual will come and actually go in the app and go through it step by step, and we will be there. Like I have like 2 other people in my team. We call ourselves I Self Coach Guides, because we're no coaches. If I say you're a self coacher, then but we guide people through it, and I think that setting is amazing. We have seen very beautiful results in that, and because it helps again that motivation, which sometimes it's still a little bit lacking. It's hard to come back and keep doing it. So yeah, this can be very much be used by a coach. Even if it's an individual. In the very beginning, when I just started this, and as a research, I would have these one-on-one sessions with people, and they would go through the app, and why I did that also, because I would get feedback from the source, and it worked beautifully. As a guide going through it, the app is still the centerpiece. The information you're sharing is still very private, so you share what you want to be. Why I'm saying this is people are still, even though when you're speaking with a friend, with a coach, with a psychologist, doesn't matter, there's always this fear of judgment. We're never as 100% honest as we are in our own mind. So if you're in this app and there is a total privacy, you can answer questions with 100% truth without the fear of being judged. And this is something that very much differentiates and makes it even a deeper experience indeed.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. One of the biggest frustrations that I have with the coaching industry is the increased commodification of what comes out of coaching. And it becomes more so the dynamic with the coach that is the focus rather than the end result. So to me, it sounds like I Self-Coach is really bringing the value of coaching to a greater number of people who maybe don't have access to the funds to hire a coach directly, or they may not have the time that would be required, or have the fear and whatnot. So can you speak a little bit more about that, about whether that was part of the goal, is to bring the value to a greater number of people?
Yes, actually that's one of the biggest reasons. Thank you for asking that, because this app is so approachable worldwide. It doesn't matter where. It brings you as an individual, you take control, you're back on that steering wheel. You're actually back and saying where you're going to without creating this attachment to a specific app. As we said, right? You can do these things without anything. This is just a tool for you. You're still the one who's driving and deciding which way you go. So one of the tests that we did, one of them was actually an Indonesian girl, and she made me realize the app, what it is, the power of it is, she said that she had a life coaching from a French girl. She had, and right in that session, she realized this French life coach, she's amazing, but the way she's approaching my situation is different because I'm Asian. You know, Asians have these specific upbringing and different life challenges that they want to work on. And life coaches are mostly in the Western, and nowadays you do see it, especially in Indonesia, that's growing more and more, thankfully. but having this app that is so dynamic and depending on what you have to say, and especially once we go towards AI, it will create that it's worldwide, and you don't need to pay 3,000 euros or dollar. You can just pay a minimum month. So that again brings everything to a lower, and it brings you to your home. You don't need to be anywhere. You can do it whenever you want, wherever you are. And this is again how and why I very much am excited about using technology. This is again one of the reasons, so thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to understand a bit more what the experience is with this app. You touched on it now, especially in the end a little bit. It's accessible, it's there. I'm just like, in an ideal way, how do I use the app? How does it look like? Do I do it continuously in the morning? How's that experience, the interaction with the app? You touched on some, also like do challenges, but do I pick challenges? Do I journal? Like, how do I ideally use it? How would this feel, since we cannot see it on the screen right now and you go through it? I just try to picture it more in my mind and get a sense of it.
Thank you. So as I said, we're trying to be ethical. Why is this ethical now comes in place is the way the app is built. Basically, you go through 4 phases, and you fill in questions, and then you try to find your comfort zone, and then find a challenge. We will help you if you need it. That's where the in-person guides come in as well in the app, that if you find it a challenge, to come up with challenges. And we wanted to make it fun. So you basically fill in some challenges, and then you spin the wheel, and one challenge will be selected. And then now it's the time to go and do the challenge. So what we're doing now, we're saying, get out of this app, go away. You have a due date, which you can change, and go do and be out there. This is again being that ethical, right? We're not making this need of you need to be constantly on this. No, we're helping through it, and now we're saying go back. And this is why we also do these workshops, because we want to have them also actually come back and do the reflection, which is the 4th phase. How did that challenge work for you? And where self-coaching comes involved is basically because we have another round of the same thing and same questions. And now you are the only one who's actually reflecting on them. Like, hey, what did I feel in the last time, and what am I feeling right now after you've done this challenge? And this reflection, again, creates this self-awareness and growth inside of you. Obviously, we want to do more and more. We're still a startup, but this is what you will have to imagine yourself doing. And we're not saying be here on every day. We're actually saying be away from it and only come if you need it.
That question perfectly queued up a bit of my question. So I have some curiosity. Earlier you were speaking a bit about the experience speaking with investors, and I can imagine that exact response that you just gave might turn a lot of investors away. I know in the industry, as we all know, they're gambling on and trying to take up as much of our headspace as possible with the screens and technology, and wanting the presence of technology within our lives. And I wonder how you've approached that. I know you've said that you've had to turn away opportunities potentially and stay true to you, and that journey is a struggle and a challenge that you're currently facing with. But I wonder how you have been overcoming that, and what rebuttal do you have towards those people who say that I know your truth of the app and that it is to be more mindful, but I'm just curious how you've been responding and how you've learned to respond to people saying to you that what you're doing is not right and you're not going to get money and you're going to, those narratives, and how you've stayed true.
So they haven't said in those specific words that you will not get money, but it's like the fact that I haven't been very active with raising, but when I did, I would get these feedbacks, and I thought that's normal. Apparently, it's not normal to even get a response from investors, because if they don't want you, they don't even care to reply. And that made me also realize there is potential here, because they're giving me advice of what to do. and they see this potential, and they try to make it in a way that they would then invest in me. So they're finding these things that they would think that will be good, and then we will invest in you. And that made me almost to also change, right? And go, oh, then I will need to do this. Oh, I need to do that. And then comes back again, practice what you preach. Am I still staying true to myself? And I think I can still raise money for sure, and with what I have and the mindset I have. Because the world is changing. Investors are super beautiful investors out there that are super conscious and aware of this technology and where it's going. And I now am standing true to who I am. The fact that I'm now true to myself, I now know also that I will find the right investor. And maybe I will, maybe I won't. It's a journey, and as a founder, to make decisions at that, at that time. But I definitely don't want to be very specific about yes or no, or they're all in the same way. But it did give me like a lot of, pep talk too. The fact that they can see something in you and they just try to tweak you here and there to make it work. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good to tweak because it's still my first founding company, and I have tweaks because of those feedbacks. But then sometimes I also retweaked it again back to what it was because I realized, oh wait, that's not why we are doing this. But a lot of the feedback also helped me, to be honest, a lot. So yeah, it's a growing journey as we go.
Okay, well, I actually just was thinking about sort of where you're at now, and we talked earlier at the very beginning about sort of the immigrant experience you had. And we also talked about how I self-coach creates a level of safety. You can do it from your own home. You're not akin to anyone else. And it just sort of brought to mind the thought around being a child of immigrant parents coming from the Asian community where therapy is not something that is really talked about or encouraged. The idea of coaching is how is that person going to know my experience and the dynamics at play. So I'm curious, as also being a product of immigrants, but also thinking about this in terms of the way things are going demographically and culturally as like a founder, do you see yourself kind of focusing on a certain population set? Do you see the challenges or the ways that we can kind of get ahead and now allow access for the older generations, and especially those in sort of the communities, the Asian communities, that might feel safer to do so? And is that something that has been part of the thinking?
Yes, absolutely. Especially if you are a company, you need to decide who you're focusing and targeting on. And it was a hard decision for me. Why? Is because I once read this thing of that self-development or personal development is a luxury, it's a Western problem, you know what I mean? Burnout is a Western problem and all these things, mental health is a Western problem. And I really much was oh no, is it really? But now I'm realizing that in Asia, more people are opening to the fact that there is a mental health issue. And when I started this, there was less talks about that. And so my target very much first was focusing on the millennials, mainly millennials, because millennials are going through the most of this. Gen Z is definitely, we're generalizing a lot here, but, and Gen Z is very aware, but it's very on the surface, and I would love to help them too, but I do feel millennials, it's also because I'm a millennial myself, and it's most relatable. I want to start there, and I want to help them, and I want to help the Western world. That's what I was focusing on, Europe and United States. Why? Is because also they still have the biggest impact, unfortunately or not, however you want to look at it. And there are plenty of immigrants in there as well, and I think, it's good to build something that is actually broad and can be used everywhere, and that's my goal too. I would love, for example, even here in Indonesia, to focus there more on, and this is actually one of the new phases that we're going into with I Self Coach too. But yeah, hopefully everyone will use it, no matter where, because now it becomes a world thing, right?
Thank you for sharing that. And just kind of want to start wrapping up. The one of the things that the whole point of this show is to kind of give a bit of like an insight, a deep dive into the person, what you offer, what you do, and we'll, have you share how people can get involved, how they can reach iSelf Coach, what's coming up for you. But the biggest thing that we try to do here is to humanize the entrepreneur, because you are having that same human experience, and yet you're also trying in your process to make that change. So thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably and kind of taking us along a bit of your journey. And just to give you a few minutes to think about sort of any sort of final words, and also how people can reach you and what's coming up next for iSelf Coach. And meanwhile, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone, namely our audience. Thank you for asking the questions that I think help drive the consideration set for other people, and it just adds to the environment. Thank you to Tropical Nomad Canggu for allowing us to have a place every Monday to come, to be inspired, to be challenged, and to feel heard. And thank you, Robert Ian Bonnick, founder of Speakup Monday, and allowing me to take a co-host seat, and it's such an honor. And for those of you who may or may not know, Speakup Monday was founded over 4 years ago in response to, in Robert's own personal network, some death and change, and really want to create a safe space for people to come where they could listen, be inspired, challenge, debate a topic, whether you're here in person, other parts of Indonesia, and around the world. So thank you so much for allowing me to take the stage and share space. And lastly, thank you, Nafiseh, for just showing us what's possible, but also allowing us to give permission to ourselves to sort of fall back in our journey as we continue to move forward, and to know that there is an opportunity, a platform where we can feel safe to grow. So with that, I would love for you to kind of just share any final words and what's coming up next. How can people get in touch with you? What's coming for iSelf Coach? Are there any workshops that are coming up that you'd like to share? And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bhavna, and thank you to the team, Robert, seriously, everyone here. This is amazing to be here and to share my bits and pieces of knowledge that I gathered. This is obviously continuous growth. I'm trying to grow spiritual and from the mindset as well. And what we're now really much trying to do with iSelf Coach is to spread more love and spread more knowledge into the world, and caring less, to be honest, about how that will create a revenue, because that was my own challenge. I need to make investors proud or whatnot. So we've actually, one thing that is coming up is the free webinar that we're offering to really much help the people to just start right away. You don't need the app. We will just tell you. If you want the app, that's great. But just to share more deep down knowledge of how to become a self-coacher and how to coach yourself, and owning up to who you are as a human being, and every day showing up for yourself. And I hope to actually also create more workshops along the way at another co-working place. So please go to iselfcoach.com. You will find the link even for the free webinar, or we have a QR code here too if needed. But and we also have for our web app that the first phase is for free, so you can get a little bit of a feeling, of a sense of what the app is. So feel free to do that, and just reach out to me directly if you have any concerns or questions. Even as a founder, to all the founders out there who want to be, thinking of more ethical ways of being a techie and how to do that, I'm happy to brainstorm with you. Thank you all.
Thank you.